Hey everybody, this is Kevin Bass from thedietwars.com. I'm a medical student. I'm also a PhD student. I'm doing both degrees. I'm dumb enough to be in school for that long. Trust me, it's definitely a dumb enough thing. And stubborn, relentless, and dumb enough. So, yeah. I'm interested in misinformation as well as many of these issues related to health. I love health, longevity stuff. I went into being interested in stuff because I wanted to solve the obesity epidemic, and then I saw that there's misinformation is so prominent that if everybody's exposed to all this conflicting misinformation and misinformation, then we can never really arrive at a public consensus about what the causes and solutions to obesity are. If we can't arrive to a public consensus about the causes and solutions to obesity, then we can't solve the problem. We can't have public support for good obesity policy because the whole public is going to be conflicted and divided about what we should actually be doing, and that will undermine the potential of actually achieving good obesity policy because we won't be able to agree on anything, and nothing can get support. So then after I became interested in obesity and obesity policy, I started becoming interested in misinformation of all kinds, not just related to obesity, but related to health in general. Because after all, it is because I'm interested in health in general that I'm interested in obesity. Okay, so in this case, we talked about in another video, about Rhonda Patrick and Huberman's promotion of sauna. Rhonda's been doing this like every day for the past 10 years. Like, sauna's the greatest, sauna's the greatest. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but every time she goes on Rogan, she's been more than 10 times or whatever. She always is very excited about sauna. And then I got challenged a little bit by a couple friends about some of my stuff about sauna, and as well as some commenters about sauna. Is what I'm saying right? Is it accurate? So to respond to that, I want to clarify some of the stuff I said about sauna because it's important. And I'm going to go look at some of the figures and try to help you guys understand some of the concepts behind some of the criticisms of these epidemiological studies. And then I want to talk about a mouse paper that's very fascinating, that kind of throws some of the narrative about sauna into a tailspin in a very funny way, an LOL kind of way, if that makes any sense. So I need this right now, this monster. First, actually I just want to talk about the new stuff because it's fun. There's a paper published in 2008 apparently. I'd never looked into this, but one of my conversations with one of my friends, I asked, is there any evidence that these heat shock proteins are longevity promoting? Because we always say heat shock proteins are the things that sauna's improving, and so if it's heat shock proteins that sauna's increasing and that's causing longevity phenotype, then presumably you should be able to overexpress through a transgene. So you basically just insert DNA into the animal, and the animal just starts producing heat shock proteins. What you do is you put it into the embryo, make sure that all the cells in the embryo are expressing it. So then if all the cells in the embryo are expressing it, then it's constant heat shock protein, high levels. If that's longevity promoting, that's good. And that sort of supports this idea that increasing heat shock proteins is going to result in longevity. Well, interestingly, there's this paper where they actually did that, and here's the abstract. I'm not going to go over the deets, but in the abstract it says, experiments in lower organisms, such as worms and flies, indicate that the molecular chaperone protein, heat shock protein 70, is a longevity factor. So they've done these experiments where they've overexpressed this protein. They say, wow, these animals are living a lot longer. However, in this study, in contrast, we demonstrate mice overexpressing HSP70, this heat shock protein 70, display growth retardation and early death. Holy shit. So not only are they like not living as like, not only are they like not growing as much, but they just like die earlier. HSP70 transgenic mice displayed increased levels of serum corticosterone and weaker expression and activity of the glucocorticoid receptor in the liver. Serum insulin-like growth factor concentrations in transgenic mice were 50% lower than in control mice, leading to growth retardation. HSP70 transgenic mice showed decreased expression of Cas9, which encodes caspase, which is an apoptotic factor. It causes cells to voluntarily die, commit suicide, basically, especially if they're like not good cells, they might be precancer. So it's a signal, okay, you off yourself now for the greater good. So Cas9 helps with. And then also showed increased expression of anti-apoptotic gene BCL2, which is the opposite. It impairs apoptosis, the cell suicide, indicating that apoptosis is suppressed. Again, cell suicide is suppressed. Consequently, most of the transgenic mice died before the age of 18 months from tumors in their lungs and lymph nodes. Wow. So these cancerous cells are not, they're not apoptosing, they're not committing suicide, so they're growing, and then they're turning into cancer. We suggest that the pro-inflammatory and anti-apoptotic effects of HSP70 might be responsible for the growth retardation, tumor formation, and early death observed in HSP70 mice. Well, if the whole narrative is that heat shock proteins are increased by sauna use, well, that throws a big monkey wrench in there, because it looks like heat shock proteins being increased is not a good thing. So where's the evidence that heat shock proteins are like a good thing in this case? Because if you overexpress them in mammals, they're not a good thing. Maybe in worms and flies, it's a good thing. But like, what about the mammal literature? And it's not so good. And of course, mammals are, rodents are more closely related to humans than worms and flies are. So that's worrisome. And of course, we can't actually do that in humans. We can't make a transgenic human. And maybe we could if you're in China and your government said it was okay to do that. All right, you can do that, make a transgenic heat shock protein human, but we're probably not going to. And we're probably not going to have a human that's, given sauna and, being given sauna, we track the course of, that human compared to other humans not given sauna for over the course of 20 years. And then checking out their heat shock proteins and see if the heat shock proteins are bigger. But that wouldn't even show that heat shock proteins are responsible for the effect. Like, you'd have to actually make a transgenic human to do that. We're not going to do that. So all we have is mice, and mice help us to figure that out. And this is an important part of the story. It's like heat shock proteins are the mediating factor, but it's not. And it's almost a meme with Joe on Joe Rogan's show that heat shock proteins are so important, but actually these heat shock proteins might be like negative. They're like might be a net negative. So that's like an important thing to note. Like, I didn't know that the whole story about heat shock proteins was in question. And I can't find any more studies in mice on heat shock proteins. I looked all the studies that cited this study. None of them were like, studies in mice contradicting this study. Seems like this study is held up for 14 years, but nobody talks about it. It's like sad, because if everybody's promoting freaking, sauna, but nobody's talking about this, and they're already saying heat shock proteins are the mechanism, and nobody's talking about this study. It's a pretty glaring omission. Like, it's kind of wrong. It seems wrong. People should be like, oh well, however, blah 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 blah. But I don't hear that. Instead, you hear that heat shock proteins are great. Sauna's great. Sauna works through heat shock proteins. Therefore, sauna is going to cause you to live longer. Well, it's baloney. I like that, baloney. All right. So next, I want to talk about the study that I think people misunderstood my criticism about. Okay, it's very simple. So this is like the main study that's cited by these guys, like Huberman and Rhonda, or now Huberman, but in the past Rhonda. Association between sauna bathing and fatal cardiovascular and all-cause mortality events. Of course, there's other papers, but this is one of the main ones because this is in JAMA Internal Medicine. I think this preceded a lot of the other papers that later came after. And it shows it's just a dramatic decrease in death. All-cause mortality with a lot of sauna bathing is like a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality, like 50% reduced chance of death. It's like freaking amazing. an association between sauna bathing and a 50% decreased risk of death. And so this study's hyped to all high heaven. I want to mention, again, this one particular commentary that showed that this particular hyping is maybe misplaced. Perhaps misplaced, mayhaps, maybe. This paragraph, it says, the authors note that heart rate increases up to 100 beats per minute during sauna sessions at moderate temperatures and up to 150 during hotter saunas. So that's where the heart goes, what happens to the heart. Although not an issue for healthy individuals, such a cardiac challenge may feel uncomfortable for participants with poor cardiorespiratory fitness and pre-existing disease. Simple adjustment for disease versus no disease may not necessarily solve this problem, since reverse causation bias operates within disease groups. The more severe disease, the greater the fear of cardiac challenge. Consistent with this reasoning, the association between saunas and sudden cardiac death was seen in individuals with diabetes but not without, among hypertensive but not among normal hypertensive individuals, among patients with cardiovascular disease but not in their healthy counterparts. A more robust finding at reduced risk of recurrence causation bias will be a graded association between number of sauna sessions and mortality in an initially healthy cardiorespiratory fit population, but this was not observed. We urge caution against the interpretation that saunas are a major cardiovascular prophylactic. So the idea is, among healthy people, sauna should help. If sauna is like preventive, if it helps some sort of risk factor, but we only see it among sick people. Right? In this study, we only see it among sick people. So therefore, if we only see it among sick people, it might be reverse causation. So the more sick you are, the less likely you're going to be doing a sauna, the more likely you're going to be to die. Okay? Because you're more sick. And you're less likely to do sauna because you're more sick, but you're not more sick because you're not doing sauna. It's the opposite. You're avoiding sauna because you're sick. And so among the more sick people in those groups, they're going to be doing less sauna. And they're going to be more likely to die because of their worse sickness, not because they're not doing less sauna. So let's go look at the graphs that show this, and then we'll throw out a little caveat here. So here's the sudden death graph, the sudden cardiac death. And we see only in the people who are oldest have a benefit. Again, supporting the same idea is like once you get to old ages, there's going to be a big difference between different people in terms of their ability to tolerate sauna. And so like the more unhealthy people who are older, they may actually just be unable to do sauna, and that's why they're more likely to die. So the more often you do sauna is kind of an indication of health rather than a cause of health. So the more you do sauna, the more you're indicated to be healthy, the less you're indicated to be healthy. It has nothing to do with the causation. So you see here the diabetics is the same thing. Diabetics, if you don't have diabetes, there's no association between frequency and reduced sudden cardiac death. But then if you do have diabetes, there's quite a huge association, right? The association, in fact, is a 73% decrease risk of death. Per 1 standard deviation change in exposure. So if you're just like the top third of diabetics in terms of your sauna use, your risk of death is like 73% lower than like somebody who has like normal sauna use. It's crazy. Same thing with hypertension. 34 decreased risk of death. Same thing with cardiovascular disease. 28% decreased risk of death. BMI almost as well. And then cardiorespiratory fitness, the less fit you are, the greater the gain in cardiorespiratory. The greater in the benefit for sudden cardiac death. Okay, cool. You see the same thing for coronary heart disease. So diabetes, again, 65%. Hypertension, 31%. Cardiovascular disease, 21%, but not statistically significant, just borderline. Left ventricular hypertrophy, which is like, I think that's like a sign of like hypertension, I want to say. Oh, it's the opposite. Huh. That's cool. But, why is that? Well, maybe you just can't tolerate sauna. I don't know. I don't understand what that is. But it's not statistically significant, so interesting. Okay, but it's the same. It's roughly the same thing, right? So, coronary heart disease death, same thing. Interestingly, you get statistical significance for cardiovascular disease death. And I think that because this includes like stroke and things like that, which the other categories don't. I think for stroke, because I think this sauna decreases blood pressure, and blood pressure is a risk factor for stroke. So I think through the risk factor of blood pressure, maybe you do get a decreased risk of stroke, even in healthy people, right? We don't know the mechanism, but at least with respect to other causes of cardiovascular disease death, yeah, it seems to have benefit even in healthy people. So that might be causal, right? The other cases are not causal, but in this case, it might be causal. Overall, cardiovascular disease death. For some reason, I don't exactly understand because I'm not given all the data here. I don't understand what all the data here mean. But I hope that clarified the argument for you guys, because it's not me saying like, some people think it's me saying that like healthy people don't benefit. No, it's not that. It's just like in most cases, for most outcomes, or for at least these two outcomes, healthy people don't have any advantage. You know, for cardiovascular disease that they might, and that's probably related to blood pressure. Interestingly, interestingly, we don't know the mechanism, but maybe it's just as good to reduce your blood pressure as it is to, you know, do sauna. Make sure your blood pressure is in a good range, below 120/80. Yeah, so I'm yawning. I'm about to fall asleep, it feels like. But yeah, I just wanted to discuss that with you guys because some people are struggling with this and have questions about what the criticism was about. So yeah, heat shock proteins actually kill mice faster. More heat shock proteins, the faster they die. I couldn't find any sauna studies in mice, actually. I couldn't find any sauna studies in mice, which is very interesting. Like I couldn't find any heat exposure, like longevity studies, like where they're chronically exposing mice to heat and then looking at their longevity. I don't think there's anything published. So all we have is like really confounded epidemiology that we're not really sure whether it's showing anything, or studies like overexpressing heat shock proteins actually show harm, or like we don't have anything else. So it's kind of crazy how we like assume this is a good thing, but there's really scant data, and that's the point of this episode of the podcast. So hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any other questions about what this research literature says, let me know. I will say that other papers, I can't find these subgroup analyses to test the same thing in these other papers. They don't have this subgroup analysis. So I can't actually evaluate in these other papers whether or not this might be playing a role, this factor that I've been talking about of having a disease and reverse causation. I can't tell because they don't have the literature doesn't have a lot of the subgroup analyses as far as I've been able to so far. So okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to share this. Thanks for watching the video. Check me out on Patreon, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. It's a funny order. I just put those in. Check me out on the website, thedietwars.com. Check me out on my podcast at The Kevin Bass Show, as well as my videos on YouTube at K-Bass Philadelphia. And hit me up. Let me know if you have any questions. Leave some comments. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That would be much appreciated. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.